Yeah, as Jenny mentioned, I just recently joined YUI as a core developer, and that happened back at the beginning of July. Before then, I was noted as one of the top single individual contributors to the gallery with 28 modules. I've, of course, been surpassed by a couple of people. But I say that to say that I know the pains that goes into creating gallery modules and a lot of the questions that come up. So you can find me on Twitter at apipkin. I'm known throughout most of the internet by apipkin. So with the old gallery, generally what you would do is you would fork the YUI3 gallery. Right now it's got 454 modules in there. So for your 1 or 2 modules, it gets kind of lost in the search. Then you have to go to the gallery site, register your metadata with the gallery site, sync up everything with GitHub, and push your commits to GitHub, and then issue a pull request or a CDN request through the site. You have to write your code, which sometimes can be a little cumbersome. I'll show you an example of one of the more common errors that I've seen. You have to use Ant, which is always a pain, especially if you're on Windows and you're trying to set up the Ant environment to run build with the Java. You run into errors that most of the time don't show up until you think that it's going to be pushed and committed to the gallery, and then you find out on Wednesday that you get an email that something failed, your build failed, or something like that, and now you have to wait a whole nother week for your gallery module to go in. And all this comes up to being headaches. It causes a lot of headaches, a lot of frustrations, a lot of emails, a lot of time spent in the IRC channel and asking questions that usually should be avoided. So have you ever seen something like this where you end up writing your code and you put your YUI add inside of your JS file, and then whenever you build it, it gets the YUI add wrapped around it. It passes because it's valid JavaScript, but whenever you go to actually use it, it runs into an error because, well, it's invalid as far as the YUI standard is concerned. So this comes up to a stigma that a lot of the gallery code is really poor quality. Maybe that there's subpar developers that are out there contributing code, but there's a lot of YUI core developers or former core developers that are contributing stuff into the gallery too, so that stigma shouldn't really be valid. And there's a lot of really intelligent people that are writing code for the gallery that, that it's just a really bad stigma. Subpar documentation. It's up to the developer to write documentation. It's not really comparable to the stuff that you would normally see inside of YUI. That's one of the things that's changing. After a while, it becomes unsupported. Usually it's someone who wrote some code, pushed it up, and they just wanted it on the CDN so that they could use it in a use statement without having to run their own local combo loader. And the last one is that it's just not as good as the core. So if you have to prefix something, like if you were including gallery tree view in, or gallery button, or anything from the gallery, just because you have to put the gallery in the tag for the use statement, you kind of feel like it's some other third party that may not be as good code as if it was right off the core. So in comes Yogi. There's a lot of tools that we've been using separately, a lot of revamped ideas that Dave has put into Yogi to mediate a lot of the stuff that we've been doing and having to fight with the gallery codes. So it's actually the same stuff that we use on the YUI core to build, write documentation, run tests, test things out, submit stuff over. It raises the bar for how you develop your gallery modules. It makes things a lot easier. You don't have to fight nearly as much. But it also levels the field between where the gallery code is and how it looks and how you can find it and search for it. As it looks the same as how the core modules are. It's also powered by Dave Glass. He's written a lot of tools, and they're really awesome. And I mean, I think that says, that speaks for itself. The fact that he wrote it, and like he said yesterday in his talk, he was able to pull the core build from 25 minutes down to under 2 minutes, and that's just phenomenal right by itself. It's also super fast. It's super awesome. So let's get into a demo of how we would actually get this set up. So the first thing we want to do is we would run npm-g install yogi. I'm not going to do this because I've already got it pulled down, and it's got quite a number of dependencies. But that's how you would pull it down. The first thing that you would want to do after you get it in is to actually log in. This is going to be your YUILibrary.com username. So if you aren't on YUILibrary.com and you're wanting to commit code, you'll need to make sure you have a password or username and password for that. And then the other thing that we want to do is we want to actually sync up to our GitHub account. So you would do that with yogi.gh for GitHub, in case that was confusing. And then it asks you if you're sure you want to sync up your account. It pulled my username down from my profile off of YUILibrary.com. In this case, it just happens to be a Pipkin because I use the same place or the same name in both places. So then now it's synced up. It's going to be saved in there for the instance of Yogi that I have on the computer. So we can change in any direction that we want to. Right now I've got, or any directory we want to. Right now I'm in project conference, and there's nothing in here. If we go over to Sublime, we'll see that the directory is empty. So what we want to do is we actually want to create the module. And normally this takes in like going and creating a source directory if we don't already have one, creating the modules directory, creating the JS directory, docs directory, test directory, all the meta files and stuff like that. It takes, if you don't have a template that you're copying over that you just want to change names in, it takes a good bit of time. Yogi is here to help us. So we'll do Yogi help and then -- detailed. And we'll see in here there is a create option. And then it takes the module name. We're going to initialize the file tree. And then we're also going to declare that it is a widget. Because what we're actually going to make is this placeholder resizer. We're using PlaceKitten. If you were at Derek's talk, he mentioned it yesterday. But the structure is that it's placekitten.com / the width of the image and then / the height of the image. So we'll be able to get those dimensions from the resize and then load in a new cat or multiple kittens as we resize. So it's going to be super useful for everyone to pull down from the gallery and using their projects. All right, so we're going to do it as widget, and then the path is by default going to be the widget name. If you don't have source created already as a directory, then it will create the source directory and then build the file tree for you there. So let's do yogi create, and then init. Our type is off the side of the screen. There we go. Widget, and then we're going to call this gallery sizer. So it checks on the gallery site, checks in the database to make sure that the namespace is available, and it says, yeah, it's available, fortunately for us. And then it says, do you want to proceed? We say yes. And then it asks again to make sure that everything looks correct. Because we created it as a widget, it's marked as skinnable. So we'll say yes, everything looks correct. And then it went through the tedious process of creating this entire file tree for us. So those are files we don't have to worry about creating or touching or anything. You'll notice that there is a CSS directory. This won't be used if we were creating a gallery CSS module, then we would put our code in the CSS directory. But because it's a widget, we are using skins, and so we'll be putting that up into the assets directory. So let's get into actually looking at the files that are generated. And now you'll see that in Sublime, we have all the files that are created. It creates a README file with our name already at the top, our history file, which should be updated every time you make a change and do a push, for your benefit as well as the community's benefit. The build JSON file. You'll notice that there's no longer the build.property or the build XML file that Ant was using. There's just one JSON file. Now, it's already populated with the name of the module, and then the JavaScript files that are created that need to be supported for it. There's already a test. As Dave said yesterday, the test is written to automatically fail for us, which is great because that's off to a good start. We know that there's something we need to fix initially. The metadata, what it requires widget. We also, because we're going to use build.create as contrary to Ryan's talk. So if we wanted to have multiple instances of this, we'd probably want to do something a little bit more time saving, but for the sake of the talk, we'll use base build or base.create. So to get base.create, we need to require base build. And because we're going to be using the resizer widget, or utility, we also need to require resize. It's going to be skinnable, so we'll leave that as true, and we'll save that file. Our JavaScript comes in, tells you exactly where to write your code, which is super handy because I wasn't really sure what we were going to do with the JavaScript file here. So let's go ahead and write our code. And you'll notice that there's in the code that I spent a while preparing this, so I didn't have to do the live coding and have a bunch of errors to fix because that's how I write code. We already have our JavaScript documentation built into it, and this is going to come into play whenever we are using YUI docs with Yogi to create our API documentation. Just the same way that you would use you would see your API documentation whenever you're looking at the gallery mod or the YUI core modules on YUI library. So we have our description, the name of the module, the class, the version since. So we haven't done anything except this one instance of it. Saving it out to YSizer. Every method has a documentation to go with it, with the description, whether it's public or protected or private if you want to list it as private. The method name and what version it's been since. If you were passing in parameters, you would do param. If it was returning a value, you would do returns. There's a lot more documentation that's out there under yui.github.com/yui-doc. It's really good, really resourceful. Tells you how to define the types, and you can also do like stacked. If you were passing in an object with different properties in it, it's really handy for that. So we'll go down to some protected methods like make resize, which initialize the resize component, and we'll notice that it's listed as protected. So that's going to come into play whenever we look at the API documentation. For the attributes, you'll see that there's a description in here. The type is a string, and by default, we're going to placekitten.com. There is a couple of other ones that's out there, like placedog and lorem pixel. They use the same format, and you would be able to change this configuration if you got tired of seeing kittens all the time in your resize placeholder. You could change that through the configuration. The default skin, our default width and height are set. Resize utility provides a way to minimize or set a constrained proportions to whether it's can't be resized any smaller than a certain size or resized larger than a certain size. So that's where min and max come in at the configuration. And then whenever we instantiate the resize utility, we pass directly into that. So even though it's hidden inside the module, we still provide a way to get through it. And then the text template that was on top of the resize utility is just a simple string that we're using the y.lang.sub to go in and do simple string replacement on. So for the documentation, that will come in for the user guides. We'll get into that in just a moment. Our CSS, we don't need that directory because it's a widget, and the CSS is going to go into a skin, so that's going to be under the assets folder. So for the core, we'll write some CSS for that. And then the skin, the particular thing that you do with different skins is the core is going to be something that is common CSS that goes across all of the skin types, whereas for Sam skin or the night skin or whatever you want to call your skin would be based on the skin name. So generally that will change colors or font styles or something like that. So we'll just put a little bit of code in there for that one. So for our documentation, we get something stubbed out here that tells you that your summary goes here, your module description goes here. So let's get rid of this and let's type our documentation. So this is our documentation. We've got a couple of really awesome things for Mustache to come in, and this is all taken care of with Celic, like the documentation is generated with Celic. So in our component.json file, we have our name. This is already generated by Yogi for us. So we have our name, our display name, which is how it would be listed on the site itself. So if we go over to this and we go to user guides, so this is where that name, the display name, would be taken care of. So what we're doing now is the user guides. So this is where the description shows up, and then the getting started is boilerplate that we put in that automatically builds it for you, builds that small section for you. So this is where your description goes in. So we'll say fun. My name is going in as the author. If you had multiple authors, it's an array, so it supports that. The tags, we want to say that it's a widget as well as a gallery component. And we'll save that and come back to the example side. So the getting started, like I was saying a while ago, it's boilerplate. So this is a partial that's stored up inside, like up in Celic, that will automatically generate this section, this getting started section for us. And then to pull over the configuration attributes, so you don't have to always go to the API to read how the configuration works out, it's generally a good idea to build a table so that we can see that. So Dave showed you yesterday that Yogi has an internal server built into it to run our API documentation and our gallery our user guides. So let's go ahead and serve Yogi after we go into the correct directory. It tells us that we're serving off of localhost 5000. So this is what Yogi actually generates for us. It lets us know that it's actually here to help. So our API documentation that we had with our JavaScript file with the javadoc or the JDoc syntax in there. We have our methods created with our descriptions. There were some protected methods. So if we want to see those, we can check the box, and we have our protected methods listed as well as our public methods. If we had private, there's a checkbox for that as well. For attributes, the same way, because they have it's done through attribute and it has all the change events in it, that's automatically added for us. We don't have to worry about adding that documentation into our API docs. So that's really awesome. With our gallery, or with our user guides, the examples in the landing page, it comes in here. This is our display name, our short description, our getting started code that was included automatically for us with the partial, and then our configuration table. And one thing that's really missing is our examples. So let's go in and add an example real quick. I'll see how fast we can actually make this happen. So we'll go into the examples array, and we'll write some metadata for our example with the name, display name, description, the modules, and tags for it. We'll need to create a file, and so this is going to be that is going to be incorrect. So the name, it's either simple and then we'll save it as a mustache file. Not that one. So this is going to be our demo code. We have our CSS that we're going to include, any additional HTML that we want to include in the example, any JavaScript that we want to put in there, and then we'll also display the JavaScript and the CSS. So I don't know how familiar you are with how mustache and handlebars work, but with the partial, we'll create a new directory called partials. And these are going to be custom partials that we're creating. So the name of the file, followed by .mustache. And we'll do this for each one of the partials that we want to create. So our example is going to be really complicated because all we have to do is initialize the JavaScript or the component itself. So that's just sizer is equal to new y.sizer, and then we want to render it into the demo node for our documentation. The CSS, we want to jazz it up just a little bit. So we're just going to modify how the demo style actually looks. And we'll save our example. We don't need any HTML, so that's just in there. I put that in there just in case I wanted to add any extra HTML around it, but turns out we didn't need it. So we'll have this actually get the JavaScript actually be implemented because it's inside of script tags, but we don't need this in here. But we'll actually be able to see the code example printed out inside of the triple backtick enclosure. So let's refresh this. Now we have our example. And undefined is not a function. Our use statement didn't work. Okay. Let's go back in and update that. And then Let's make sure I didn't leave out a name somewhere. Yeah. Make sure that this isn't the issue. Yogi build. All right, so let's stop the server. Tell it to build. And that actually runs shifter under the hood to build our min files. That was a good catch, Dave. That's why I'm glad he's back there. A lot of this stuff is really new. I actually just got this past Friday with the create methods inside of it. And we need to restart our server. All right, we'll come back to that. I've got an example in another file that works. So the other thing that I want to show is the test. Right now, there is a test that's automatically generated, and it fails for us. So if we go into our test, we've already got a test suite created. We'll want to have sizer equal to null for our instance that we're going to create. We'll get rid of this one test that's created that fails, and then we'll write some test code. And so our test code will initialize sizer. We're going to check to make sure that setting the width and height of through the attributes is actually changing the width and height of the component itself. And then the way we do that at first is we check to make sure that what it's currently set to is what it actually is. Then we'll set it, and then we'll check again to make sure what it's currently set to is actually where it's at. The next thing that we'll do is we'll check for whenever after the image loads, so once we resize and it gets a new image in, we'll want to make sure that the URL that we're passing in with the width and the height being replaced is actually the URL that's being loaded into the image. So just some general tests. We're not testing functionality of drag. That's a little bit more involved. So now that we have the test in here, let's make sure we save. And we're going to run into the same issue with the test, or not being able to find it. So we'll go up to my other. So now we'll be able to see that it actually renders. And whenever we can still resize it, and then if we run the test again, it resizes it down to the size that we had in here for 250 by 250. And so it says that all the tests passed, and we had a total of 2 tests. So the other thing is doing it with Yogi or with coverage. And so right now you have to start your server with running Istanbul as an option. But soon I believe that's going to be set by default. So if we run it with Istanbul, and it's on the same port, our coverage will actually take our test, give us a report back that says that we've only covered 50% of our branches with our tests and 75% of our function calls. We can go into the directory and then go into the actual file, see the printout of it. This lets us know that this branch the else path wasn't taken, this branch wasn't taken, this branch wasn't taken. These functions weren't actually called because these are being called whenever you actually drag and resize. So It's super useful, and the benefit of this is that if we go into gallery sizer and we make changes to the code, we're able to just hit a button and run tests to make sure we don't have any regressions. So that gives us our API documentation. It gives us our user guide documentation. We've got our test. So the last thing that we want to do is we want to actually get this pushed up to the gallery. Before, you would push this over, you would commit this to GitHub. You'd go into the website. You would find your last commit statement in Git and tell it issue a CDN pull request. So now, let's go back to our clean one that we just created. We'll add it in and actually do a commit. And we'll add in our build statements. All right, so now we have a clean build or a clean Git. We'll push this over. Let's actually go over to GitHub and create a repository for it. So we'll create a repository. We'll add it in.
Clear your screen.
Oh, okay. It's already set to our YUIConf. That's good. I'm good with that one. So we'll push up. And then the magic of Yogi actually comes in, where we will do a CDN request. And then it says, do we want to do initial release? And we'll say, yes, that's the one we want. And now it is successfully in the CDN queue. No more having to go to YUI or to the gallery website, surfing around, trying to find your module, clicking request. You can do this all from the command line. So now if we want to check on our status, we can check that it's not in the queue yet. And then once it actually gets, and once it actually gets approved, you can use Yogi history, and you'll see that it was actually approved. Oh. So Dave Glass automatically denied us, apparently. But it was auto approved whenever we first created it, and then it was approved. The module itself was approved, but whenever we did the CDN request, it was denied. So we'll do another one. It was successfully pushed. Or it was successfully requested. And now it's still waiting approval on the status. And now we can see that it's in the CDN deployment queue as of just a few minutes ago. So now you can get all of that information, and let's see if we go to Yogi history, let's see what it tells us. It tells us that it was denied a while ago, and now it's approved, even though we didn't make any changes to our code. Excellent. So a few commands that we went over. You have to log in with Yogi to get things going up to the gallery. Sync your Yogi with GitHub. Create your Yogi module. You can initialize it if you need the file tree. If you've already got the file tree, say it's a module that you're wanting to get pushed or converted over to something Yogi supports. Dave showed you yesterday that it's just Yogi update and then changing where your source directory is. So now you can see that it went to a repo called YUIConf 2012, not our fork of YUI3 gallery. So it's the only thing that's sitting in that repo, and that makes my life easier whenever I'm trying to search through and get my module to make some changes to it. So that will register a new module. It will initialize the tree for you, and then you can define the type. If you don't want to define the type, you'll get a default branch or a default tree built. But I recommend defining the type. That way you get all the files that you know you need. Yogi Serve will give you the page that we saw a while ago with this list in it. So it gives you your two types of documentation and your two types of tests, one without coverage and one with coverage. And both of those are equally important to run through. And then if you run Istanbul as the option, you'll get even better coverage information. Yogi lint, we didn't cover this, but Yogi lint's really awesome because it will lint your JavaScript to make sure that it's written very well. And then there's Yogi test that will run it on the command line. Let's take a look at that one real quick. And this is actually running the same test that we had a while ago, but what we saw that was happening with undefined, or that it wasn't able to pull in the gallery module, we can see that the same errors that we were seeing in the console log are coming up into the command line. So let's go to the one that was working before. Where the tests were passing, and you'll see that we actually get information that the test passed. And if we do, we can actually run our coverage in here with Istanbul, and we'll get the same output in some nice fancy ASCII art, so that it's nice and legible. And then there's Yogi Help, and then better yet, there's Yogi Help with detailed information. It gives you a super long list because Yogi is jam-packed and here to help write modules for you or help you write modules. And so whenever you're in the community, there's the forums that are out there. You can, if you're writing modules and you need help, feel free to jump on the forums. You can file tickets if you find bugs in Yogi or in other gallery modules or core modules, or better yet, write a pull request, because that means that we don't have to debug it and then write the code and make sure that it works. If you know what the issue is and you can write the pull request, submit it up and we'll pull it in. Another way to really interact with the community is how I got involved with it about 3 or 4 years ago, and that was joining on the IRC channel. A lot of really helpful people. Luke Smith was actually the first Yahoo core developer that I talked to that got me super motivated in writing YUI modules, and now I'm up here talking about it. Special thanks to Dave Glass for giving me a hard time during the presentation and for writing awesome tools. Krishnan, who wrote Istanbul for us, and then Mark James, who is the author of Place Kitten. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony. Is Krishnan here? Bummer. Krishnan's a super awesome Yahoo who wrote Istanbul, which is a JS-based coverage tool that we are super excited about, and you can find that on GitHub. Question over here.
Can you use all this? Let's say that I'm writing my own code for my company, and I don't necessarily want to publish that on the gallery, but I can still use Yogi for doing all that, creating the templates and all that.
Right now, you can't. That is coming to be able to initialize the file tree without having to submit it as. Yogi init. Oh, is that in now? Oh, sweet. Yeah, apparently you can. Yogi init is in there. Let's go and create another directory and see this work. That way we can call him out if it doesn't. And then just the module name, Dave? And then say yes, and there's our file tree. So without even having to connect to YUILibrary.com, we can create modules and never have to push out to the gallery. Yeah, so that's awesome. Thanks for getting that done, Dave. Yeah.
Hi, I had a question. When you create a pull request, is it a good idea to create a ticket first, or can we create a GitHub issue, or how does that work?
I would let someone else.
I'll take a stab. So if there's a bug, file the bug and then issue a pull request, because we may or may not merge in your pull request if it meets our contribution standards or not. But at least if the pull request doesn't get merged in, the bug is still long-lived and other people can try to fix the bug. If it's not a bug and more of an enhancement, that's really up to you. We don't necessarily need to track it by a bug, but if it is a true bug, please file a bug first. Over here.
So this Yogi test runs only for one module, or you can run for multiple modules?
You can run multiple modules. Whenever we run in the core, we can have it run across the entire, all 90-something modules that we have. Yeah.
Yeah. So I noted in the metadata there was a array for authors. Does that mean that we're approaching a time when, like, if you and I are collaborating on a gallery module, either of us could submit a CDN request and maintain that module?
I would imagine so. Yes, and then both of us be listed on there as the author.
Coming soon.
Thanks, Dave.
Is there any easy way to move our current modules from the gallery to different repo?
Yeah,
preserving all the history and all that. I mean,
that would be more something with Git to take care of that. But I'm sure Dave's got a.
Yeah, actually, I showed it yesterday in my keynote to move a module from the YUI3 gallery repo into your own. YOGIInfo has a couple of set methods on it that you can set the path to the module and the repo name, so you could actually move it to a different repo, and then you could put it in foo, bar, baz, source, my module, so you don't have to keep everything at the top of the tree like we do, and you can name it whatever you want.
And that'll keep your history with the gallery, but you would lose, like, if you...
You could actually do a couple of git commands to pull your directory over and just morph your history if you wanted to.
Okay. Any more questions?
All right, thanks, Tony.
Yeah, thank you.